Hello, and welcome to the Louise Elizabeth podcast, formerly known as the Happy Lifestyles podcast. Head over to episode 35 if you would love to learn more about the rebrand. This space is a space for me to talk about anything relating to holistic health living, mind, body, lifestyle, spirit, business, and so much more. In my opinion, health is a whole lifestyle, not just one thing that we work on. I will be getting transparent with you, sharing information that I have learned that has supported me and things that I'm currently learning and working on myself. Living a happy and holistic life has changed my world, and I hope to inspire you to do the same or give you the tools and resources that you can take away into your own life. I am a 620-hour registered yoga teacher. I am a registered holistic nutritionist and a professional network marketer in the wellness industry. Thank you for being here. Let's get started with today's episode. Hello, everybody. I am very excited about this week's episode. I have the lovely Kat Taniberg joining me. Say hi, Kat. Oh, I gotta turn you up. Okay, just kidding. Try again.
Hi.
We heard you that time. Okay, I'm super excited to have you here. We're going to dive right into it because I feel like what we're going to talk about today, we could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours and hours, and we want to be mindful of your time. So today, we're here to talk about your beautiful female cycle and learning to navigate your female cycle because it's really, I don't want to say complex because it goes in circles, but it's not the same as the way men work and the way their bodies work and excuse me, all of that. So we're going to dive into it. And first, and what I would really love is for you, Kat, to share your story about navigating your female cycle because I know we have very similar personalities and I think our story is quite similar as well. So take it away.
Ooh. I love this, and yeah, you're right, we could be talking about this for days, and thank you so much for having me here. I can't wait to see all the magic that comes up whilst we chat today. When you're wanting me to share about my journey of navigating my cycle, do you want me to also explain what happened to me when I was kind of first experiencing issues with my cycle, or do you want me to just, yeah, okay, sweet.
Start with the issues, because if it's like me, you lived with that for a long time, right? And then something along the way, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be what it needs to be, right? And so, yeah.
Okay. My cycle issues started very early. I was one of the girls that got her period super early. I think I was 11 years old, and it didn't get like regular straight away, but around the age of 13, it started to become regular, and I really looked at my cycle and my period like a curse, because every time my period would arrive, I would be out for at least a day, if not two. I would be prone to bed. I would be in so much pain. I would have to miss school. And I was just so fed up with this whole idea of, why is this happening to me? And I come from a family that doesn't necessarily look at health in a holistic way. So I was just told, oh, that's just your cycle. You just got to deal with it. You just one of these women that gets lots of pain. And I was like, okay, being 13 years old, didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
So I continued on this journey, and every time my period would come, I would dread it. I would hate it. I would be in pain. And it wasn't until I was about 16 that I was like, okay, something needs to change. I cannot live my life like that. So what do you do as a 16-year-old? You go to the doctor, and the doctor goes, oh, yeah, well, maybe you should go on the pill. It's going to solve all your issues. It's also going to clear your skin, considering you have some acne. So 16-year-old me was, cool, that sounds epic. So bad to think about it now like that way, but that's the truth, and I know that this is the truth for many women. And, I trusted the doctor. I didn't think that there was going to be anything with it. I didn't have any clue what else could be an option. So I got started on the pill, and I stayed on hormonal birth control for a total of, I guess, 12 years non-stop, and I tried different things. I had the pill. At one point I was on the ring, and then eventually I got on the IUD. The ring worked the best for me. That was the one that I used for the longest period of time. But then life changed when me and my now husband decided to go and leave Europe and go and travel to New Zealand. And because of my whole way of thinking about my period as a nuisance, and often skipping my period when I was on the ring and whatever, I was like, oh, I wonder if there's a way that I can like get rid of it like completely, or like not have to deal with it whilst traveling, because that is a nuisance. So I went to the gynecologist, and he recommended an IUD. He recommended the hormonal IUD. So again, like I chatted to him about it. He said, yeah, there's nothing, like, people love it, blah, blah, blah. Not really any side effects. Gonna like be great. So I was like, cool, sounds awesome. Again, I trusted the doctor. Anyway, so then like the day I went to insert it was one of the most traumatic days of my life, because I literally nearly fainted.
Yeah.
My body definitely did not want this thing in me. But back then, 25 years old, I didn't know I had that connection to my body that I have now. So I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. It's just what it is. I remember like driving home, because I was living in a small mountain town in Austria. I had to drive an hour to like the big town with the big hospitals and stuff. And then driving back and just feeling so icky and being in pain when I got home, and I couldn't like move it. It was like exactly the kind of same pains that I used to feel when I was like younger and getting my period. But I went through it, and we ended up going traveling, and it was great. I didn't really get my period. Life was sweet. And it wasn't until about, I guess, 5 or 6 months after getting the IUD, whilst we were traveling around New Zealand, living the dream, living in a van, life was amazing, I was so sad. I couldn't explain what was wrong with me, like what was going on. I was just so deeply sad. I like had suicidal thoughts at times. I didn't know how to like navigate all of this, and I was lost. I'd never heard about depression really at that point, and I didn't know that was what was going on with me until I started to practice yoga. And one of the ladies that I went always to her classes, I kind of opened up to her what was going on, because the more I started going to her classes, the more I noticed that heaviness lift. So I opened up to her what was going on, and she was the first person to kind of point me towards the fact that maybe I'm depressed. And into that, and then I started to get into holistic nutrition, and I read this book, and it talked about the fact that hormonal birth control can cause depression, and I started looking into side effects of the hormonal IUD, and I was like, there it is. No one told me anything. And I would love to say that that was the moment that I decided to get the IUD taken out, but that is not the truth. Because I was so afraid of those debilitating pains coming back that I was like, maybe I just can focus on adding more good stuff, and that will help me. And then, I don't have to really worry about it. Then I can kind of like balance it out. So that was my first focus for many years, until I moved to Canada and I started working with Juice Plus and like taking the supplements. That really helped me find more balance, and I started to learn that other women had help with their hormonal issues coming off birth control, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm ready to do this. Maybe I'm ready to come off this and give it a go, and I did.
Yeah.
And that was 3 years after having the IUD inserted, and once again, it was like a whole dilemma getting it out, and like definitely my body was like hating it. From the moment it was in there.
I think that's just the IUD. That's just the IUD. Like when I got it put in, I smoked weed at the time. I walked the 2 buildings home from the doctor. It was the worst pain I've ever experienced. Walked 2 buildings home to the doctor. Literally was going to smoke weed to help with the pain. Had it ready to go. Had a bowl packed and just passed out. Like that was how badly it hurt. So and then when I got it taken out too, it was like, it was so bad.
So bad.
Yeah.
So that was my journey around periods, and like not knowing anything about it, and that kind of started me on this whole holistic quest. And eventually I learned about the work of Alyssa Vitti and In the Flow, and that was kind of where things changed for me. And I learned that I had 4 phases to my cycle.
Yeah.
And I learned that there was things that I could do to help bring balance, and that PMS was, even though it's common, it's not normal, and that
Yeah.
I don't need to experience it. So I really started to kind of go down this rabbit hole of learning about the female cycle.
Yeah. And it's funny, like we chat a lot outside of this podcast, and your journey was definitely more on the feminine flow, just kind of intuitively doing it sort of style, where mine was more on the masculine, logical point form kind of thing, right? So anybody that listens to my podcast has definitely heard my PMS story, and I won't get into it because that's another 15-20 minutes. But if you haven't, head to my Instagram, you'll be able to find it. But essentially, I got to this point where I got really interested in the cycle, the 28 days of living in your female cycle, because I'm very masculine, strong energy for sure, and I'm a red personality, so I'm just like a go 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 person, and I would just always go and then crash, and that was just my cycle: go go go, work hard, crash. And I mean, the crash didn't come in the shape of always getting sick necessarily. It was like not having energy for 2 weeks and not really knowing why, or just like go on a 5-week vacation after working my ass off all summer, and it taking like a week to find flow on vacation and find energy and be excited because I was literally physically drained, right? Or what we do for the first week wasn't a lot of exploring because I just didn't have the energy for it. So that was something that my logical brain, so just to kind of jump through my story, is when I started my holistic nutrition studies. And I wasn't really interested in women's cycles yet, or women's hormones. And what really sparked my interest is I actually had to read this book. And you know what? I'll put the book in the show notes. It's a book that I forget the title off the top of my head, but it is a book that I actually had to read for the women's, so it was actually the children's nourishment, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Class for the program. And the book is about nourishing children, but a big part of the book, arguably like 80 to 90% of the book, is actually about nourishing women. And it's really interesting because it goes through it all, and like literally the author has written what your hormones go through when you give birth. And I remember reading that and being like, wow, that is freaking fascinating. Like the women's body is so interesting, and the female body is so interesting. And I remember just being like, oh wow, that's really cool. So that actually sparked my interest in being like thinking about like the hormone side of things. Like, what is your body doing hormone side? So Alyssa Vitti, also I came across her what's that book called? Living in the Flow, yeah. And even before that, I was kind of doing research on it because I just like, I love that logical point form, here it is for you sort of deal. And yeah, that was like the spark of it for me, out of like pure logical masculine brain of mine, wanting to be like, okay, like this, and this. And then as the go and crash person reading that book, and I used to think slowing down what made you weak. You know, like not doing things means you were going backwards, you weren't going forward. And reading that book and thinking about, because also I thought your period was a also like this horrible thing that you had to just endure as a woman. Like that was your curse for being a woman, you know? Like men have different reasons to have a curse of being a man, and women had different reasons of being a curse, you know, and ours is our period and our PMS and la 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 la. And I remember reading that book because she does a really good job. Actually, she does a really good job at delivering the information in a masculine and feminine way, where it's like, here's, you know, one chapter is like literally, this is what your hormones are doing, you know, this is what it does for your brain, this is what it does for this. And I just loved that because my logical brain just all of a sudden got permission to slow down sometimes. And there are some things that I love doing, is slowing down. And you know, maybe your balance is like, oh, I can't not do anything. Well, slowing down doesn't mean not doing anything. You know, you could take a hot bath and read a book, but instead of reading like a personal development book, maybe you read your favorite nonfiction that you don't give yourself permission to read because you have to be learning, or you're you know what I mean, you're not growing, or whatever it is. And that for me has been my journey, which has been super masculine, which has supported me in tapping into that more feminine side. So anyway, it's just so funny to listen to that and think about it. And yeah, we've had very similar journeys that are also like one's very feminine and one's very masculine, but like also has elements of the other in there. So that's fluffy. If you're listening, you might be like, that sounds fluffy. It is kind of fluffy.
Yeah, I think for me it was definitely like feminine, because at that point in my life I was learning to tap into my feminine more, because just like you, I had been living in my masculine for so long, especially running my business. Like for the first 3 years I was very much in the masculine, and for me, like the first thing that brought me more into the feminine and slowing down was learning about human design, which is a topic for a completely different thing. But learning about my energy type and the fact that it's a non-energy type and actually need rest kind of got me spurred on this more like journey of tapping into my feminine and more flow, which led me to the work of elasticity and cycle tracking and cyclical living. And yeah, so it's like just a slightly different way of finding my way there.
Yeah, but that's like perfect, because like when you're trying to, like we're here to talk about navigating your female cycle. The thing about your female cycle, which I think is so beautiful, is there is an element of both, right? There in the analogy I love to use is the pendulum, and I use it for more things than just your cycle. But that pendulum at the doctor's office, right? You pull on one side and you let go. What happens? The other side comes out almost an equal amount than what you let go. And then it goes back, right? And it comes back and forth until eventually it just has this beautiful, it's still, it's quiet, it's balanced, right? It's not moving. It's just in this beautiful balance of nothing. And like, that's just how your cycle works too, right? You got to do a little bit of this to get a little bit of that. And the doing business on the more masculine side is something personally I've really struggled to let go of. And I always find myself coming back to. And it's just been this journey, like navigating your own cycle, right? Is finding that balance of like being like, okay, I actually do want to hustle, but I don't want to hustle 24/7. How can I hustle to honor my hormones? There's certain parts of the month that I want to get creative. I want to sit and journal. I want to come up with new ideas. I want to collaborate, which are all different times to do that with, and the more you do it intentionally, the more it happens in flow. For example, I had a call 2 or 3 days ago, ovulation phase, good time to collaborate and pitch. That's what we did on the call. We collaborated and pitched, and it just like flowed out. Like all these things came out, and then we both left that call feeling really excited and energized, and had I tried to do that in a time where I'm just struggling to communicate, maybe we wouldn't have had as much to say. But I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't book a call on my ovulation actual day on purpose. It just happened organically.
Don't do that. I do that. That's like something I do in my life.
I was
my life for my cycle.
I was for a while there, and just like we're on this road trip, right? So sometimes I just have to book in when I can, or know that I have the time and space to. And so it just happened by accident, and I was like, man, that call's really good. And then I just, out of curiosity, I was like, right, where am I again? Because I don't remember off the top of my head. I always have to refer back to my tracker, and I was like, oh, today's ovulation day.
I love that.
Yeah.
I also always like to think of like that in our cycle that we have the balance of the masculine and feminine. Something that I always teach is in the first half of our cycle, so from menstruation to ovulation, we're more in the masculine energy. We're coming kind of out of what I like to call our menstrual cave. We're engaging with the world. Our focus is outward. And then from ovulation into menstruation, we're more in the feminine. We're more going inward and really kind of, like you said, going into that journaling. So even in our own cycle, we have both the masculine and the feminine. And like you said, there's a time for the hustle. And just like you just talked about, you during your ovulation phase had that call. Like yesterday was a hustle day for me. Like I am also in my ovulation phase right now, and I had a lot that need to get done, and I started working at 7 a.m. and I didn't finish until I got home at 8:30 p.m. That's 13 and a half hours. I would normally never do that, but I know that the phase of my cycle that I was in supported me to do that.
Yeah, no, and that's like, and it's a journey, right? Like there's days where, and this is something that I teach outside of cycles, is you have those days where you feel like a rock star, or you do something, you're like, I kind of need to get this done today. Like, for example, the house needs to get clean, I have guests coming, whatever, right? You can't control, you have guests coming and your period sometimes. Like, that's just how it goes. But you clean the house and you maybe don't have your period. I won't use that example because I know some people just think you have your period, you need to feel like shit. So we'll say the 4 days leading up to your period, you clean the house and you're like, oh, this is such a drag. I feel so drained. Like, ugh, this list of shit to do. I know luteal phase is to-do list, but like the list of things to clean just like, oh, it feels like a drag. Had you done that a week earlier on the first half of your luteal phase, you probably would have cleaned the house and did it 10 times better and got 10 times more done in the same time frame, because it's just where your hormones are at. It's where your brain is thinking. Like, there's nothing fluffy about it. Like, I remember thinking like the whole cycle thing at first was fluffy, and then the science of this is literally what hormones are pumping through you, and this is what these hormones do to your brain and your body. There's nothing fluffy about it, which is like, again, that beautiful balance of masculine and feminine as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love how it all circles back around, right?
It totally does. And that's, I think, the power of learning to navigate your cycle is, I think it all starts with the awareness and just noticing like which phase of your cycle you're on and how are you naturally feeling. And, we always talk about the archetypal powers of the cycle, and it might not be exactly like you experience it, but starting to tap into it and just notice and then become aware of it, and really be like, oh yeah, when I'm in this phase of my cycle, I always feel like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll start to notice, like, even though your hormones are unreliable, like some people would say, they're actually very reliable, because you'll have the same cycles over and over again, and there's going to be patterns in your cycle.
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally. And if you're listening to this, you're like, well, I have endometriosis, or I have PCOS, and there's nothing regular, or I just don't have regular periods yet. Like, that is something that you do have to work towards. But it's easy to sit there and be like, ugh, I have these imbalances, this sucks, this is BS, whatever you're talking about. But the thing is that's also a blessing in disguise. Maybe, yes, I understand endometriosis can be very painful, and it tends to be very painful for a lot of women. PCOS tends to also be painful for a lot of women. Cycle irregular, the regular cycle, that generally comes with PMS. I get that PMS is painful. I used to experience that. And as much as at that time and space you're like, oh, this really sucks, it actually really is a blessing in disguise, because you have that superpower to be like, okay, something is out of balance and I need to balance it. Because the thing is PMS might seem minuscule, like, oh, okay, some cramps, whatever, every month. But that could be, if that's not taken care of, that could lead to things that are a lot more impactful on your health and how you feel and how you feel long term and the longevity of your life, and not even just the longevity, but the quality. That will take a bigger impact if you don't do anything. And that's like that with any symptoms, right? So, being a woman, we actually have that advantage over men. Like, we really have that advantage over men, because men don't get that 28-day-ish or monthly cycle-ish, right? Like, they just don't have that. And I really do believe that women tend to live longer for two reasons. One is, if we put on weight, we notice it right away, right? Because it comes right on our belly. And so a lot of women will go on a health journey because they want to lose weight. Or our cycles, because our cycles are out of sync. We've got estrogen dominant like conditions, or our period just doesn't, it isn't bleeding enough because we don't have enough estrogen, whatever it is. Where men just, if they have fat on them, it goes viscerally, so it goes into their organs. So if they don't necessarily have a lot of fat on them, they won't see it right away until that I call it the dad bod, where that puffy belly comes out, right? They don't get a period every month, so they don't have or every month-ish, they don't have that cue to be like, hey, something's up here, right? Yeah. Because their hormones aren't telling them. Their hormones aren't being like, hey, these are some signals that I'm sending to you. So that's my theory on why women, on average, have a longer life expectancy than men, because we get clues and cues sooner than men that, hey, something might not be working at its prime. So
if only we would listen to the cues.
And yeah, and it's good that you said that, because this is like something I've been thinking about, and even just talking to, obviously I talk to a lot of women. My business is to help people. I have to get to know if I can, if what I have to offer supports them. And there's so many women that say, I just don't have time to take care of my cycle. And what I'll say, two things to that. One, fine, if you don't have time to take care of your cycle, that's a choice you have to make. What are your priorities? Your health, or whatever's too busy for you? Whatever's filling up your calendar. And that's you have to decide. And on the other side of that kind of leads into that, is you have to decide. You have to decide that you want to do something, like the person that keeps complaining that they're out of shape, well, you have to do something. You have to do it. If you don't want to go to the gym, that's cool. There's so many other ways. It's either you're going to stop making the excuses and make the time, or reevaluate where you're spending your time, or you're not. And it's fine. If you don't want to, that's cool. Own that and stop complaining about it. That's what I always say to people. You know, it's fine. If you don't want to do it, that's cool. But like, don't come to me and complain to me and look for sympathy from me. Like, I had PMS and I took action because I prefer doing things with my time instead of being debilitated by pain. And that was a choice I made. Doesn't mean it'll be a good choice for you, but you still got to do it. You know, the person that's like, oh, I hate my job and I want a new job. Well, have you applied to new jobs? No? Well.
Exactly.
What do you want?
Exactly. We got to take the action, because if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Nothing changes, nothing changes. So for you, I would love to know, what was it about, okay, this is probably a lot of things. What are some top rapid fire 3 things that navigating your female cycle and honoring your female cycle have changed for you in your life?
The 3 top things. The first one, it has allowed me to tap into cyclical living, meaning, you know, everything has cycles. Nature has cycles, the moon has cycles, everything has cycles. So embracing the fact that there's times where I hustle and there's times when I slow down. So that's been the biggest one, just really allowing myself to kind of tap into that seasonal nature in a monthly phase, because it's like every person needs rest. So I'm allowing to give myself it every month. That's number 1. Number 2 is it has started, because I have experienced some hormonal imbalances this year, but it has started to become better. And that has been a big one, of learning to really tap into my cycle. It has been able to bring more balance into my hormones and heal some issues that had arisen. And the third one is it has allowed me to become more creative, because I'm really allowing myself to tap into the different superpowers that I have during the different phases and use them to my advantage.
Yeah. Love that. I love that. I'm going to rapid fire my 3 answers. Mine are actually very similar. So the first one is, that balance. But my thing is, and I know this, there's no such thing as 100% of the time. I love analogies. So if I put gas into my car and I'm just going to drive, even like Vince and I are going to drive back across the country, the car would just stop working. Even if we kept putting gas in it every time it's on empty and we just wanted to drive straight for 5,000 kilometers, it would just stop. It would be like, whoa, this is too much. Like, I actually need to turn off and rest, right? So it's the same. Humans need the same. But what I love about living cyclically is that I do it with strategy. So instead of trying to go when my body needs to rest, I rest. And turns out I actually have more energy when I rest when my body needs it. Or it shouldn't even say need it, when that's what my body thrives on. Yeah. For me, it's literally just day 1 of my period. Even if I need to actually be more engaged for whatever reason, if I have commitments or, we're going to go for a hike, whatever it is, that's fine. I still rest afterwards. I have more energy the next day. If I just take that one day to do what I love to do, read a book, cuddle my dog, whatever it is, I actually have more energy sooner. Whereas if I'm on day 1 of my cycle and I'm just trying to push, I'm tired for more days. So by strategically resting, I have more energy. Everybody needs to rest, right? So when I do it strategically, I have more energy. That's my first one, which for me, as you guys who know me know, I have a lot of energy. So I love to have energy. So it's actually a win-win. That's the first one. The second one is kind of hard to explain, but the living in that, like, I want to hustle, but I don't want to hustle 24/7. Has actually created a really strong boundary of just me saying no to people. And like, that can be me saying no in like a social setting. That could also be me saying no to business. I mean, like, look, I just don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And that's like, I could talk about that for 4 hours. And the third is also the same as yours, which arguably the third goes before the second, because I have always had really good boundaries, but is being more creative. And not even just being more creative, but trusting that whatever is coming up intuitively or in my gut or in a meditation or whatever it is awesome. Whatever's coming up is amazing stuff. It's not just like all this and then because my brain is in that creativity, especially when you do it around your cycle, right? When the 2 hemispheres are synced up, your logical and your intuitive creative side are synced up, your logical brain isn't going to overthink what comes up intuitively because they're connected, right? So if something comes up, I'm not right away like, oh, well, that's a bad idea, or that sucks, or that, whatever the negative self-talk is. I just don't have the energy or the space for the ego because that's not where I'm at, right? So that's been really empowering too. Just something comes up and just trusting that it's good, whether it means crazy momentum now or it means crazy momentum in 2 years. I don't know, but yeah, that's been really good. And a bonus has been my relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's more personal. I'll keep that for me.
I could also say that, with balancing my hormones, the libido is better. So it's maybe a fourth one there if we're talking about relationships and all that fun stuff.
Oh, awesome. I love all that. Is there anything else that you would love to share or add? Like, if someone's listening to this, let's just put ourselves in the place of someone that is maybe listening to this and just can't imagine, is in so much pain, hates their period, feels so disconnected from that cycle of being a woman, and listening to it is like, this is just beyond me. What is one thing you could say to someone that maybe feels comforting or reassuring or whatever?
I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're feeling like you're overwhelmed and you're so disconnected, don't try to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Reach out to someone who is doing this professionally and helps women, or maybe it's just your girlfriend. Just look for help. Like, don't suffer alone. And this is actually a very feminine trait that a lot of women have kind of let go of, is that receiving of help.
Yes.
And guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing yourself to tap into that, I think, is very, very powerful.
Yeah, totally. The allowing to receive, that was a hard one. Still, I struggle with that sometimes. Mine would be, and yours is a more feminine answer, mine's a more masculine answer, which is such a beautiful answer. Pick one thing out of, just everything. We've shared our journeys, we've shared our stories. We didn't share too many tips and tricks, which is fine because there's so many. But from our journeys and our stories, there's one thing in the last however long we've been chatting that you can do, whether it's having a mindfulness practice or just reading a book, listening to another podcast, or whatever it is, finding someone to like, if you don't follow either of us or both of us on Instagram, maybe go and consume some of our content. Like, there is one actionable thing that you can take, and maybe it's as simple as, actually, I think it was my last episode, or no, 2 episodes ago, whatever it was, of tracking your cycle. Go listen to that. Start tracking your cycle. It's simple, like, download an app. Just put when you have your period. You don't have to put anything else. Just put when you have your period in there. Put when you have your period in there and start to understand it more. Like, there is definitely one actionable thing that you can start with, and find that thing that works for you and just take that action. Yeah.
Totally.
Cool. Let me we're doing so good for time. Look at us. We have something really exciting that we want to share with you on that note. Kat, do you want to do the honors, or do you want me to do the honors?
Well, I'm really excited to. I'll give a little bit of a hint, and then you can do the actual honors.
Okay.
Like Louise has been hinting the whole time, her approach being like the masculine and then mine being more the feminine. I feel like sometimes tapping into both can be very beneficial, and looking at, which way resonates more, because depending on where you're at in your journey, there's going to be one that aligns more. So bringing the two together has been fun, and we've been masterminding on how we can bring both of our skills together. So
yeah, and like, just to share this story, like how I was saying, tapping into the creativity and the intuition and trusting what comes up. It's funny, we were sitting there driving and I just had this thought, and I reached out to Kat, and then Kat sent me a picture of her journal where she had basically written the exact same thing down that I reached out to her about. And we're just like, if this isn't a sign, I don't know what is. So we've been masterminding, and originally we were going to do a mastermind, but then we the more we started unpacking everything, unpacking her journey, my journey, her tools, my tools, and just seeing this beautiful balance of all these things, and wanting to bring a balance of feminine and masculine to this journey of navigating your own female cycle, we realized we wanted to do something different than a mastermind. So what we've come to you with, or what we've come up with, what we've created, what we're working on and we're so excited about is it's called Navigate Your Female Cycle. And it's actually a journey to find that balance between hustling and flowing. And it's a container. And so it's not like your typical masterminds. I know there's masterminds every week, everywhere you look, there's a mastermind. This is something that's a retreat, a journey, a growth opportunity. It's not just going to be, okay, here's a lesson week after week after week after week. It's actually going to be a mix of, here, watch this lesson on your own, and then we're going to come on the call and do some things together, take some actionable steps, and actually have that space of essentially kind of like a little online retreat, but even better. A little bit different.
And I think the other thing that I'm really excited about as well is it comes kind of back to that piece of, I guess, what I shared earlier, which I didn't even think about back then, but the not doing it on your own. I feel like sometimes we feel like we're alone and we're the only ones struggling. So coming together with a group of women who are going through a similar journey and embarking on this road together to really learn to navigate your cycle as a woman, like, that is powerful. Like, that is where our feminine magic lies, when we come together and we share and we collaborate. That is powerful, and that's what I'm personally very excited about for this container.
Me too. And because obviously we're going to be here guiding you, and this is like, I was actually thinking about this on my hike yesterday that I already shared with Kat before we started recording, is every time I did a yoga teacher training, even though I was there to learn, it was such a journey. It was like such a container. And, it wasn't just my teacher or teachers that I was learning from and the material they were giving and the lessons they were producing. It was my fellow students that were in there as well. We learned from each other because, there was a lot of sharing, a lot of, okay, this is how this resonated with me, which is a different way than, the teachers interpret it. So even with Kat and I, what we're going to share with you, we're going to have that balance of masculine, here's a lesson, here's some hardcore do thoughts for you, but then here's the feminine side of, like, how does that make you feel, what does that mean to you, and giving you that space and that container to support you and interpreting it in a way that lands with you. And that's why having this as a container or a women's circle retreat, whatever makes sense to you, is going to be so amazing.
It's going to be incredible. I'm beyond excited for it.
Yeah.
And I know that there's going to be some huge breakthroughs happening. Yes. And like you said, it's just a space to come together and learn from each other and share is going to be magical. Yeah,
this is going to be so magical, and rapid fire, some things we're going to do, just rapid fire, because there's actually so much more to unpack too. And Kat and I are going to be very intuitive with the 12 weeks together. Is if we need to modify, we're going to modify, but we're going to do cycle tracking. We're going to have you write your own PMS story, write what it's at now and where you'd love to be in the future. We're going to have pelvic meditations. We're going to have journal sessions. We're going to learn to live in sync with our period. We're going to learn about the seasons and take a more masculine approach. Then we're going to learn about the seasons and take a more feminine approach. Routines, rituals. We're going to learn how to not to fully ditch the hustle, but find the balance with the hustle, not totally be like, okay, F you hustle, but when do you want to hustle and finding that? And we're going to do that together. We're going to learn about stress. We're going to learn about sleep. We're going to learn about human design, topics, tools, self-care, mindfulness, you name it. There's so much coming at you, and we're so excited to do it.
It's going to be so good.
It's going to be amazing. Yes, it's going to be so amazing. So if you're listening and you want to learn more, there'll be a link in my show note that you can go and click to learn more or to connect with us, ask us questions. There's going to be payment plans. There's going to be all that you can possibly imagine to support you in making that decision of joining us for this incredible container. We do have limited space because we do want to be mindful of everybody in there and everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, all the women in there to have the space to really open up and feel supported and feel seen, because if there's too many people, then it's just not, everybody's not going to have the time and space to share and grow and expand together.
Exactly.
Yay! Okay, so on that note, I guess we should share when it starts. So at the time of releasing this, it'll be October 10th. So October 24th is when we start. We haven't decided if we're going to have a rolling start, actually, which I'm sure we'll have a bit of a rolling start, but then we are going to cut it off. So either we're full or the cutoff date is done. And so we start October 24th. So make sure to reach out before it hits, before it starts, before it's something. Okay, Kat, would you like to add anything to that before we wrap it all up?
I would just like to say that if this is calling your name, just go for it. And, reach out to us. If any of the payment plans are not working for you and you need something else, reach out to us. We would like to make this available to you and have you with us if it aligns.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, tuning in. I hope you gained some sort of value. Please, if you could take a couple minutes of your precious time to either leave a review or share on your socials, tag I am Louise Elizabeth, and help me spread the word of holistic health living to the entire world. Maybe that's a big dream, maybe not, but thanks again, and have a beautiful day wherever you are in this beautiful and incredible world of ours.